You are what you eat. So there are those that say, well, be careful what you eat. If you're going to eat something that is genetically modified, well, you'll become genetically modified. Some say, some suggest that some suggest be careful drinking cold water because that could bring on early dementia. And then others say, well, room temperature water, it might be filled with who knows what kind of, unforeseen uh, mites and the like. And fluoride, ooh, oh my gosh, that's a killer. So flour, well, of course, you got to be gluten free. Animal food, so I once heard from a friend, I don't eat anything that eats other things. So I guess we're left for intermittent fasting. Oh, well, others say that that's not a good idea at all because you're starving the body and the nutrients it needs. So it seems to me the best thing to do is not eat or drink because the food's contaminated. The water, oy, filter it, then you leave it in a plastic container, it picks up all the, what do they call it in the plastic there? I forgot what it's called.
It's microplastic. Microplastics.
Microplastics, that's right. Could be 5% of your brain is plastic today. And of course, you can't drink straight from the tap because someone else drank from it. And. So don't eat and drink because you are what you eat. Oh my gosh, we're all in trouble.
You can't even breathe it in because of it.
Oh, okay. Now Menachem Hillel took the breath out of me. He just gave me a whack. He says you can't even breathe the air that we're breathing because it's full of contaminants. As a matter of fact, someone asked me, oh, my daughter asked me today, are you having a cold? Because I sneezed. So no, I don't know. It might be spring allergies. Although it's snowing outside right now, so who knows what's going on? My gosh, crazy it is. Welcome to Tanya Today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zvich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We are in chapter 37, and chapter 37 says, it's all up to me. Each and every single one of us, that our divine service and our actions that we take throughout this time of exile is going to bring the final redemption. Now, maybe it might include some GMOs and it might include some water that's not exactly 100%, but we'll be 100%. That's where we're going, to the final redemption. How are we going to make it there? Well, as we've explained, when you use the physical of this world that God wants us to use because he wants a dwelling place, he wants to be comfortable in the material world here. So he gave us material mitzvahs to do, and that takes an action on our part to do them. So when we engage in the mitzvah, the object of the mitzvah is imbued with divinity, with holiness. So whether it's skin of an animal that you use for your mezuzah that you put up, right? Or it's a citron fruit, the esrog that you use for the mitzvah of the 4 kinds on Sukkot, or if it's a coin that you use for being charitable, the object itself becomes enveloped with the divine. And of course, the individual does, as actually learned in chapter 35, that when you extend your hand in giving charity, or to wrap your arm with tefillin, the act of doing that, right, is a physical act that the arm, the limb itself, the power that was generated to give that limb the capability to put on the tefillin, which is from the animal soul, the vital soul that gives vitality, right, to us. All of that is bound up in the light of God, right?
What about the mitzvah tank?
The
Mitzvah tank.
Oh, so today we continue with that notion. So before we get to the mitzvah tank, we're going to get there. But energy, we just said about the energy that the vital soul / animal soul has, that gives me the power to act, to reach out my arm to give charity, reach out my arm to help another, take my arm and put on the leather straps from that animal, right, that was made into tefillin. But the energy, where did I get the energy? Well, it came from the animal soul. Where'd the animal soul get it from? The food and the drink that it ate, that it consumed. What happened with that food and drink? It became the blood of the individual, the flesh and blood, but the blood in particular, because that's where the vitality of the animal soul that gives vitality to the body to be able to move and do the act. So what's with that food? What happens to that food? Well, since the whole food was used in order to do the mitzvah, so we have what's absorbed in the mitzvah, the act of the person doing the mitzvah, right? The souls, both souls, a godly soul for sure, but even the animal soul that's giving vitality, it too is absorbed in the divine, let alone, of course, the object of mitzvah. But now the food and drink is also absorbed in the divine. Now, where was that food before? It was klipas noiga. So it can't be bacon, because that's completely a negative force for a Jew to be able to eat and get strength from it to do a mitzvah. But an apple or something kosher that now you ingested, with now giving you the energy to do the mitzvah, so that food also absorbed in holiness, in the divine. Instead of that food being degenerated, right? How do you degenerate food? Well, when you eat with your eyes, you're eating for the desire, the pleasure of the animal soul. So it becomes self-serving for the animal soul. And then it's not elevated. But when it's being used not with the physical eyes pleasure or the animal souls and bodies pleasure of having the food, but you're using it in order to gain energy. So you could learn Tanya right now. So I ate an apple before the class. I needed a little boost, a little energy. So now that apple becomes absorbed in the divine through the mitzvah they're doing now of studying Tanya. And of course, the animal soul likewise, and the is also absorbed, right?
And of course, the bracha has to be.
Right. But this is not the point of the bracha. The point is, if the food is absorbed and now giving you the energy, right? So it's not about the bracha, but you're correct. We need to make the bracha because the bracha is in that moment a recognition that this is God's gift to us, right? And therefore we thank him for that. But that's the blessing is in the moment of an awareness that this belongs to God and we have permission to use it because we say thank you to God. So the point that the Alter Rebbe is making here, though, is that food now turns. That means you have an awareness. It doesn't mean the food turns into holiness. When you make a bracha on the food, you bring holiness to you, not necessarily to the food. When the food becomes your energy, and with that energy, you do the mitzvah, right? Of learning like we are doing now. So then the food itself, not the awareness that comes about the food, that it belongs to God and you need to make a blessing to have permission to use it. But the food itself becomes absorbed in the divine. That's the nuance. That's right. Because what's important about that is that the world needs to become a vehicle, needs to become a home for the divine, right? Not that I become aware of the divine. That's me making a blessing is I'm aware of that this apple has a divine origin and I'm aware of it, but that doesn't make the apple absorbed in the divine. When I have eaten the apple and now it's given me nourishment, it's become my blood that now is nourishing me and giving me energy. Who's it giving energy to? The animal soul. And the animal souls then gives that energy to the body to act. So when now you extend your hand, the energy that you had to do that came from that apple that became a part of you, and it became now a part of the divine. The food.
So it's foodless. It's a divine foodless by giving you this energy.
Right. And hence, and this is the point, it itself is absorbed in the divine. Not just my limb doing the act of the mitzvah, not just my soul, but the actual food itself. That's very important. Why? Because otherwise, how do I make a dwelling place for God in this low world? The low world, the apple remains a lowly apple, right? It only serves a purpose. But here, by serving the purpose, it is itself absorbed in the divine. That's the chiddush. And therefore, the physical reality of this world means the apple becomes part of making a home for God in this world. Right? God's comfortable with my apple. I hope.
Would it be correct to say it's parallel to like a korbanot, like a sacrifice that the animals?
Yeah, the animal itself has a divinity, exactly. Yeah. But the chiddush, the novelty in this is that itself is a mitzvah you're doing. That's a mitzvah. It's like the citron fruit, right? The esrog. It's a mitzvah. So it's an object of mitzvah. So of course that's divine, right? Similar to a Torah scroll. That's divine. That we get, right? So the esrog is, and so is the sacrifice on the altar. But this is not in and of itself a mitzvah. The food that we eat on Shabbos, that's a different story. It's a mitzvah because there's a mitzvah to have the pleasure of food on Shabbos. But today, there isn't any mitzvah. So when we eat the food, how does it get absorbed? It's not a mitzvah. But since it's giving vitality to my body that I can do the mitzvah, it too is absorbed into the divine order of things. It ascends above. And now, all the klipas noiga constitutes the vitality of the physical world, and as a whole, it will ascend as well. So now, this general force of this world, right, is klipas noiga, right? It's a shell that has some good in it. Mainly, it's a negative force, right? Because it's a self-directed force, but it will ascend on high. This general vital force, as it is in me when I eat the food, so it is in the general world, right? So when is that going to happen? How's that going to happen? Well, there's 600,000 general souls of the Jewish people that are further divided into each one, 600,000 for, right? And when the individual souls will fulfill the 613 commandments. So what does that mean? 365 are negative commandments. So what does a negative commandment mean? You're staying away from something that when you stay away from it, you don't allow the negative force to feed you some negative force. Whether it's non-kosher food or non-kosher word that you're going to say or non-kosher action, striking somebody, for example, right? In thought, speech, and action. You will not allow that negativity of the 365 prohibitions of the Torah to nurture you from the klipas noiga to completely negative force of shalish klipas etzmeyas, right? So they're not getting nurture, meaning all that negativity will disperse. If right, it's you're going to banish the unclean spirit. How? When you stay away from anything that you're not allowed to do, what that is saying, it's not like, you're just getting some brownie points. So, you didn't speak, someone said something negative and you didn't speak Lashon Hara, you didn't speak ill, right? You didn't have a negative thought that arose to your mind and give it any playtime, right? Or an action of eating something not kosher, for example, right? The act of eating. What that means is you didn't give nurture to the negative forces of the world. When you don't give nurture to it, because where does it get nurtured from? Remember, Judaism is unique. Hasidus in particular. There are not two forces in this world, the godhood and the sainthood, positive and negative, up and down, light and dark. No, it's only one force, God, right? So when you have holiness directly from God, when you do a mitzvah, you get imbued by the light of God. At the same time, what will be absorbed with that is not just the holy act that you did and not just the holy object, but even the klipas noiga that was engaged in it, the food, or the mitzvah tank, or the car that you used, right, we'll get, yeah, right, all the things that you use for the mitzvah, all of that gets absorbed into holiness. So then what happens? Evil has no place to get the three shalish klipas, which is you have holiness, evil, complete evil down here, and in between, klipas noiga, the mid ground, right? Which most of this world is vital force, is a shell that covers over the divinity. It's not directly holy. There is a spark of holiness in there, but that's pending on us using it. But when we elevate it, it's the source for the complete evil. But if it's not giving nurture to the evil, what happens to evil? It becomes banished. Furthermore, each individual soul, when we fulfill the 248 positive commandments, then we elevate God and bind him to the entire vital soul of the 248 limbs of the body in a perfect unity. Because we've done God's will. And we're going to go into tomorrow more. I think I overstepped today and spoke a little about what we'll do tomorrow. But we're in the middle of a thought. Any questions?
When we do when we fulfill the negative mitzvah, is it also like creating a space or place for Hashem to dwell? Is giving Hashem the opportunity to dwell in our midst, but in a greater intensity?
He's not dwelling through you not eating something not kosher or not saying lashon hara. He's not dwelling there, but you didn't push him away if he was already dwelling there. If you speak something that's not appropriate, you pushed God away, right? His light will not embrace you. So that's, that's the idea there. But that the light should embrace you, you need to do a positive act to elicit the light of God, that it should embrace the individual. And it's embracing us in our divine soul, animal soul, body, the limbs that are involved, right? Now we just said the food and drink that give us the energy, because that absorbs into us and becomes us. And who am I in this moment? I'm doing a mitzvah. I'm learning Tanya with energy that was given to me by the food and drink. So it too is absorbed in the divine. That's the key.
It's the reason why we have this spookiness as to what enters our body, which is a food.
Yeah.
Thoughts are.
David is asking, is there a difference in divinity between a vegetarian making a blessing over food that consists of vegetation compared to a person making a blessing over food that consists of animal meat? Not to make a blessing over animal meat, right, is like saying that God can't dwell in the animal. God can dwell in a vegetable. You can make him comfortable in the vegetable, but you can't make him comfortable in the animal. That would be wrong. A kosher animal could be elevated to divine. Now, maybe for health reasons, you don't want to eat too much red meat, let's say. Let us say, right? Fine. Fine, that's okay. But to say that it cannot be elevated to the divine, or it's less elevated to the divine, would be a mistake. Why would red meat be less elevated to the divine than, a cucumber and tomato? Because you think it shouldn't be? Because you think, how dare you kill an animal? We're not killing an animal. We're elevating an animal. Just like we're elevating the cucumber and tomato. We're elevating it to the divine. When you look at it that way, being a vegetarian for philosophical reasons may be an issue. Right? Maybe an issue. Being vegetarian because for health reasons, you feel better that way, fine. Might be a question on Shabbos, that you should supposed to eat. You know, chicken, holidays, you eat meat. If you happen not to like it, not for philosophical reasons, but you don't like the taste, whatever, or just you always fall asleep after having a steak, and you don't like it, doesn't taste so great, and it just makes you tired, and you don't feel great. Okay, fine. On Shabbos, you're supposed to eat foods that give you pleasure, and if it doesn't give you pleasure, so eat something else. But it's equally elevated. Yehuda, the Alter Rebbe mentioned when we do a prohibition that we receive vitality from one of the three unclean klipas. What are the three klipas? They're just from a verse, so they're called, we'll call the first wind, the strong wind, fire, and it's just negative force. That's a negative force that cannot be elevated. That's the idea of it. And it's just, this is what the name of it is. It's what's more important is the concept of it rather than it does come from a verse in Ezekiel, Yecheskel. I just don't remember it now. I would have to look it up. Thank you, Huda. Jeffrey, why use a cow skin and not a sheep skin for a tefillin, since the calf caused Bnei Israel to sin? Good question, Jeffrey. I don't know if I have an answer to that. Probably need a scribe who understands the skins better. I don't. And therefore, there's something about the cow's skin that I think it is more fitting or better used for, writing on it. I think that's what it comes down to, if I recall correctly. We're going to be learning it soon in Rambam, maybe a couple days. Yeah, we're actually going to learn it very shortly. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Is there a prayer before and after the baby eat? For a baby that can't talk? So parents usually make a blessing just to, you know, without, without God's name. Usually just to create the notion, the subconscious awareness in the subconscious that a blessing is made over food. Yes, we do that for kids. All right, beautiful. Thank you, folks. Jennifer, there was fewer people on earth when we received the Torah. What about the notion are eating minimum meat due to lowering the carbon footprint of all of us? Good question. Very good question, Jennifer. Thank you. I'm not certain to how far we are supposed to take the idea of the carbon footprint into consideration. I'm not certain. I'm not certain. Is what scientists will say, and some will say, and some will say otherwise, and that, is that something that is obligatory. You see, in society, that not making it obligatory right? Not making it that like, oh, you can't eat meat now because the carbon footprint that we're creating by, now they're making some kind of regulations and so on, but it's like top down more than, you know, top down meaning, in the manufacturing of it, but this government come and said, oh, you can't eat anymore, McDonald's, you're going to have to close down, and all the other, meat places, you're going to have to serve half a menu only, and you can only serve it certain hours a day because we need to worry about the carbon footprint. I don't see that that's happening, and so I'm not certain how much we have to take that into consideration. Um, yeah, to think about that. All right. Else? Should a non-Jew bench before or after? Um, you could, not obliged. Obliged maybe to have an awareness of God, yes. Is it true, Jeffrey asks, that other things that there's no such thing as a real atheist? Absolutely true. No such thing.
What's the question about that?
Huh?
What was the question?
About non-Jew making blessings.
No, just what?
Oh, about is there an atheist? Has there ever believed there's such a thing as an atheist? Not really. You're created in the image of God, so you've got something of God within you. Does an atheist have hope? Where's hope come from? But our soul, right? Comes from our soul, not from our animal soul. Our animal soul sees victimhood. We have hope. Where's like I don't know. Does the gazelle have hope when it's running from the coyote? I don't think it thinks about hope. It just runs for its life, right? Doesn't then afterwards come to the rest of the gazelle clan and oh, I was just hoping. No, but we have a sense of hope. Where does it come from? It comes from the fact we have a soul that's a part of, created in the image of God. And therefore, God is all good, so there's good. There's hope always. Why should there be? Only because we believe. The soul believes. That doesn't mean you're conscious of the belief. But the fact that you have a sense of hope is because that's your soul expressing itself in its belief in God. Just one idea. All right, Rambam coming up, folks. Come and join us. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad, Zurich and Kadesh, Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege.